Welcome to Naked Spirituality, a video blog series of sacred attention therapy in the Center for Human Awakening. My name is Rob Meager. For more information about sacred attention therapy, the Center for Human Awakening, and our video blog series, please visit our website at www.centerforhumanawakening.com, and center is spelled C-E-N-T-E-R. These video blogs are intended to be spontaneous, unscripted dialogues between myself and other supporters of the Center for Human Awakening. And our guest today is Paul Hunting, and we'll be talking to Paul about his pioneering soul coaching and leadership development. And I'd now like to invite Paul to come on screen. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Rob.
Nice to be with you. We're reaching you today in the UK, but
That's
in
right.
a beautiful part of the UK. I'm trying to remember specifically. Can you share it with us?
Well, it's near Stratford-on-Avon.
Right.
That's
Yes.
the closest well-known town. Yeah, so it's Shakespeare country.
That's right. And we might get into that in the dialogue, because there is one book you've written that's fascinating. I've had an opportunity to look through it, talking about some of the spiritual enlightenment that Shakespeare has shared with us in the past. But to begin the dialogue, want to talk about your soul-centered coaching and leadership development, especially your unique approach, and that is through using horses. And you've very kindly written an article for the upcoming Center for Human Awakening newsletter, which will be put out in another week or so. And your biography in the newsletter states the following, which I'd like to use as a foyer into our sharing together. And it says the following of yourself. It says, Paul has devoted the past 35 years to pioneering soul-centered coaching and leadership development. He soon discovered a rare talent for using intuition, metaphor, and symbology to enable clients to clear deep unconscious blocks to success. This led Paul to originate Horse Joy, his unique program of horse-assisted transformation. His first paradigm-busting book, Why Talk to a Guru When You Can Whisper to a Horse? The Art of Authentic Leadership, has earned him a worldwide reputation as a facilitator, trainer, and thought leader. And so I wanted to use that beautiful piece to invite you to tell us a little bit about Horse Joy. What is Horse Joy?
Well, it does what it says on the tin. It brings people together with horses and produces joy in to replace any, shall we say, suffering or issue or conflict that they might have been experiencing when they walk through the door.
Okay.
So they walk in with some kind of pain or issue or something that they find they've not been able to resolve or achieve for sometimes many years, and they walk out clear and with a sense of joy and fulfillment. So
now this
lining.
joy component of Horse Joy, is it a process of giving them joy or helping them rediscover the joy that they always had?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the nature of the soul is joyful. It's that's just its nature. And when we're in trouble, when we're in pain or in difficulty, it usually means, and I say usually because I don't like to say always, but I probably mean always. It's a pretty good sign that we've lost contact with who we really are as a soul, as a spiritual being. I facilitate a process with the horses that brings people back into a reconnection with their true self, with their authentic self, and that produces joy. It just comes up spontaneously.
I want to talk specifically about the horses and their role in this process in a few minutes, but I first want to ask, because you opened the door to go in to this modality that you work with, and I wanted to ask, what's the soul-centered aspect of your work? Because it figures prominently in your biography, and you've already referenced it in the time we've been sharing. What's this soul-centered aspect of your work?
Well, I suppose it's you know, to find a kind of a mental way of talking about something that is beyond mental comprehension and understanding. It can be considered as a paradigm, if you like. It's that the paradigm being that we don't have a soul, we are a soul, and we have a mind and a body and a personality and an ego through which to express ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so coming from a soul center, which is a natural place within us, it's not an artificial place, it's a true place within us. When we can look at situations and our lives and ourselves from a soul center, it immediately starts to bring healing through detachment, forgiveness, releasing, letting go, observation. All those things start to happen quite naturally. We change our perspective, and it allows for what I call timeless wisdom to come through. Not necessarily through me, but just through, because it's there, it's who we are. Does that answer your question?
And no doubt, as we continue to share, we'll keep weaving back in and out of that connection with the soul. I wanted to bring the horses themselves. What are perhaps the tool you use in most, if not all, of your work? And I'm smiling in part because I can remember as a little boy riding horses, and just the joy of riding horses. Of course, there was, at that time, being a little boy, there was the counter or balancing aspect of fear of these great creatures. Being a little boy, they're just these mountainous creatures. And even today, if I can use the word reverence, I will, to describe just a kind of an awe and respect for these creatures that are not only very large but very powerful. I'd be interesting to observe myself if I was ever in the company of a horse today, because of course my relationship to animals and nature has changed since I was a little boy. But how do the horses factor in to the process, Paul? How is working with the horse facilitating healing?
Okay, well, I'll put it as bluntly, I was going to say, as I can, is that basically horses do not have an ego. So when we as a human approach and attempt to communicate or influence a horse through our ego, it's not going to understand us, it's not going to respect us, it's not going to trust us, and it won't engage with us. Okay? So if we want to have that relationship, if we want to have an authentic relationship with the horse such that it is going to do what we ask it to do in a willing partnership, cooperating kind of way, we have to go to that authentic place inside ourselves, which, I would call the soul or the true self, or at least because that is an infinite place. We're talking about touching into it, on some level that's appropriate for us on this particular occasion. So the horse is like a mirror it will give you feedback about who you're being, um, and when we're being false, like Shakespeare said, "And this above all, to thine own self be true, and it follows, like the night the day, that thou canst not then be false to any man." So when we're being true to ourselves, it means that it involves not being false. So in other words, it requires us to be authentic. And the horse requires us to be authentic for him to follow us. So it's, the questions that I ask people, I have, there's 7 questions, and I've come up with this great terminology for these 7 questions. I call them the 7 questions, which I think is brilliant, and it's, and I don't ask people the 7 questions like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 intentions that I hold, that I explore as I'm working with someone over a period of time. Usually, somewhere between half a day and a day it takes to go through this. So I'm exploring the idea of, well, who are you afraid you are? Who are you pretending to be? Which, the 2 kind of core layers of the ego, if you like, is the self-concept. I'm afraid I am some kind of person. We're looking at the negative, the fear aspect.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid I am, I don't know, unworthy or incapable, or somehow there's something wrong with me. I'm afraid of that. I pretend that that I'm fine, that I'm strong, that I'm secure, that I'm capable, that I'm funny, that I'm wealthy, whatever it happens to be. And so those are the first 2 areas that I start to explore in the spirit of awareness, through the consciousness of the soul, if you like, through the perspective of the soul. We can observe these patterns or these beliefs, the core beliefs that run those aspects of us. We start to get detachment, and we start to get understanding, and we start to get authority over the part of us that is false, that is running that particular issue. So who are you afraid you are? Who are you pretending to be? How does that seem to serve you? So there's a reason for it, a good reason for why we've adopted this limiting pattern as a coping or a compensating mechanism. So we need to get in touch with the apparent benefit, but also the cost. How much is that? What is that costing you in your relationship? So those 4 parameters of which hold together the false self, or the 2 aspects of the false self. So that's the first task. We call that stage 1. And then I ask people, well, if that's not who you are, who are you really? It's like, oh. And usually people don't really know, in terms of, they don't have an answer to that. They might have a sense, and that doesn't matter, because what I'm after is for people to start looking. And asking someone a question, it leads their attention. And so their attention goes from being stuck in who they're not into seeking, looking for who are you really? Well, I don't know, So immediately they're looking for that. What do you really want? I'm not really. How can you be more true to yourself? I don't know. So it's not cognitive. That's the thing. It doesn't have to be cognitive. It's a place of natural knowing. We don't need a word level on it at all. So what is like a sense that they're tapping into that authentic place without necessarily having a label for it or any kind of language, that's the time that I start to encourage them to take some risks with the horse. Not physical risks, but risks in terms of very often it's being more assertive, standing your ground in the face of resistance or conflict.
Mm-hmm.
The horse will press on you. It will intuitively sense what your weakness is, and it will lean on it because it says, "I'm not going to follow you until I can trust you."
Yeah.
And if you yield to me when I press on you, I can't trust you. It's like if you're climbing up a mountain and somebody reached a hand down to help you up. You got hold of it, and it was all kind of squidgy, and there was nothing there. You wouldn't be able to trust it if it kind of started to wobble and give way. But if it was firm, the hand was firm,
Mm-hmm.
you could trust it, and you could put some weight on it, and you know that it was there, and then you could use it. But if it kind of gives way, everything, you can't. And that's what the horse does. It presses on you, says, "Can I trust you?"
Mm-hmm.
And if I can trust you, then
Mm-hmm.
what do you want? And then when people get in touch with that through the horse, it's a sort of
Mm-hmm.
I guess, a kind of feedback loop cycle that people go through that's very different. It's new.
Mm-hmm.
They bring a new place inside. Maybe not new, but that it's a sort of it's new in this situation, in this context. It's a discovery, and so it gives them the inspiration to take a risk, and that releases the blocked energy.
Paul, is this that component of your work that incorporates the intuition, the metaphor, and the symbology?
I've got to say yes, haven't I? I mean, but
Because you specifically referenced the intuition, but what about the metaphor and the symbology? How does that come into the working with the horses and more broadly the work that you do?
Right. Okay. Before we go out to meet the horse and work with the horse, I work with the client for possibly an hour or so, or until we've created a situation with the horse that is a metaphor for the relationship that the client wants to find some resolution in.
Mm-hmm.
So that is listening very closely to what the client's saying, and just getting an intuitive sense of when when I get a feeling, I just get a feeling. Certain things come into place, kind of line up. Like, for example, the client becomes very clear about how to define the issue and what the outcome is that they want. And I just see a scenario, an exercise with the horse that represents, that is a metaphor for that aspect of their relationship. So that's how the symbolism or the symbology comes in. The horse symbolizes, represents the relationship. It could be their boss, it could be a team, could be a personal relationship. Somebody that reports into them that they find it hard to communicate with, or is resistant. All those sorts of scenarios.
Now, if a client comes to work with you, if they travel to where you're living, of course, you have a number of horses as part of your family that you would work with. But if you were to travel to work with a client abroad, and there were horses that were there, would you work with those horses as part of your work?
Yeah, I mean, I can do that. In fact, I've just done that. I just went to funny you should say that. I've just come back from Sri Lanka, where I was asked to do some development work with various different groups of people, with horses that obviously I hadn't met or got to know in any, before I went out there. So I was definitely stretched and challenged, and very vulnerable in the sense that I didn't know whether I could deliver what I was promising to deliver and what was kind of expected of me. But I did, I mean, I've been doing this for a very long time. With horses, I've been working for over 20 years in this way. I spent some time with them before, encountering the clients just to get a sense, and it was very challenging, and it was very hot as well. But somehow, the fact that it was so challenging, and the fact that the work that I could do had to be very, very subtle and contained. But for me, it was exceptionally rewarding, personally, and also astonishing as to the results that the client, the people that I worked with, were actually getting. It was absolutely magical, absolutely magical. So it's opened up a whole new level of possibility for my work. I love people to come here, and I love working with my horses, and it reduces the number of unknown variables quite considerably. But having said that, it's actually a lot of fun to work with, in a new and with a lot of unknowns. Brings something else out. The learning is a two-way street. It's always a two-way street.
Paul, what's the typical profile of a client you work with, or is there one?
Well, over the last 10 years, I've been working with what we call over here C-level executives. C-level is chief executive, chief financial officer, CEO, CFO, COO, whatever, so senior level executives have been very often brought to me by other coaches that are working with those people. A lot of my work is through I wouldn't call it referrals really, but working in partnership with other coaches.
Okay.
And what they're after is a catalyst, if you like, to take their work with their client to a new level. Not a lot of coaches like the sound of that, because they want to be able to do it all themselves. But it's a bit like, I suppose it's a bit like being a doctor, and you need sometimes to go and see a specialist in a particular area in order to, get a result for your client. So it's like I'm a kind of a specialist in a particular area, and somebody described me as my process as being surgically precise. And it's like, and it is, when I'm working with a client with a horse, it's like I get a scalpel out and I go right into that place where that fear lives and excise it. It's great.
Now, Paul, if people wanted to get in touch with you, can they do so through email, a website, and how would they reach out to you, Paul?
Yeah, well, I'm updating my website at the moment, but it's easy to remember. It's horsejoy.com. So I'm Paul at horsejoy.com.
Okay.
Email that'll reach me.
Yep.
And the website is www.horsejoy.com.
Wonderful.
and as I said, that's in the process of being updated. So
Okay.
it's still the old site is still live and kicking as well.
Okay.
Perhaps not the best way of describing a horse-assisted website as being alive and kicking, but
That's wonderful. Okay. I'll make sure that contact information is scrolling in the credits at the end. And let's stay in touch, Paul. I'm always fascinated when people use nature, and I'll include fauna in nature, and in particular horses. There's a number of healers, practitioners in the area that I live in the world, that work with horses in a healing modality. And it fascinates me. So I'll thank you for sharing. Again, the contact information will be scrolling in the credits. And thanks for spending this time with us, Paul.
Pleasure. Been a pleasure.
Okay, thank you.
Very welcome. You Bowen, as they say in Sri Lanka.
Okay.
Which is I wish you long life or some such thing. It's about
Wonderful. Okay. Until next time.
say Shanti. So
Okay. Thanks very much, Paul.
bye bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.